They said, "It's just a broken hip, she'll be fine." So I left them nothing but my x-rays. The morning light filters through my kitchen window, casting long shadows across the breakfast table where I sit alone, my coffee growing cold as I stare at the stack of legal documents before me. The silence in this house has become deafening. Not the comfortable quiet of solitude, but the hollow echo of abandonment. Each creak of the old wooden floors reminds me of footsteps that no longer come, of children who once filled these rooms with laughter, and now treat my home like a museum they'll inherit someday. The irony isn't lost on me that the very walls they expect to claim witnessed their ultimate betrayal. My name is Margaret, and at 73, I've learned that the cruelest lessons come from those we love most. This house in suburban Chicago has been my sanctuary for 45 years, where I raised 3 children, Sarah, Michael, and Jennifer, after my husband passed when they were barely teenagers. Every corner holds a memory. The height marks on the kitchen door frame, the scuff on the living room wall from Michael's bicycle, the paint stains on the basement floor from Sarah's art projects. I poured my life into this place, and more importantly, into them. Before we continue with my story, I want to ask you something. Please take a moment to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with people from all over the world. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, because we're here to truly help families navigate these difficult situations. Your support means everything, and it helps us reach more people who might need to hear these stories. ***. The accident happened on a Tuesday morning in February. Chicago winters are unforgiving, and the sidewalk outside my house had turned into a sheet of ice overnight. I was coming back from my weekly grocery run, my arms full of bags, when my feet went out from under me. The pain was immediate and nauseating. A sharp, grinding sensation in my left hip that made me cry out. I lay there on the frozen concrete, unable to move, watching my breath form clouds in the bitter air, as I waited for help that seemed like it would never come. Mrs. Chun, my neighbor across the street, was the one who found me. She must have heard my calls for help and came running, her house slippers sliding on the ice as she rushed to my aid. "Don't move, Margaret," she said, her voice steady despite the panic in her eyes. She called 911 while kneeling beside me, her warm hand on my shoulder the only comfort in those terrifying moments. The paramedics confirmed what I already knew. My hip was badly broken, fractured in multiple places that would require surgery and months of recovery. From my hospital bed, drugged and disoriented, I called my children. Sarah, my eldest at 48, was the first to answer. I could hear the busy hum of her law office in the background as I tried to explain what had happened. "Oh, Mom, that's terrible," she said, but her tone was distracted, professional. "I'm right in the middle of a huge case, but I'll try to get there this weekend if I can." Try to get there. Her mother was lying in a hospital bed with a shattered hip, and she would try to fit me into her schedule. Michael, my middle child, was equally dismissive when I reached him at his corporate office in downtown Chicago, barely 20 minutes away. "A broken hip? That's not so bad, Mom. My friend's grandmother had the same thing and she was fine. You're tough, you'll bounce back." The casual way he brushed off my pain, reducing my injury to an inconvenience, made my heart ache more than my hip. He promised to visit soon, but couldn't give me a specific time because of back-to-back meetings all week. Jennifer, my youngest at 42, was traveling for her marketing job when I called. Her response was perhaps the most crushing of all. "Mom, you always worry too much. It's just a broken hip. You'll be fine. I can't change my flight plans for this. I have presentations to give. I'll see you when I get back next month. Just a broken hip." As if the foundation of my mobility, my independence, my entire way of life hadn't just crumbled beneath me. The surgery took 4 hours. Dr. Martinez, a kind man with gentle hands, replaced my entire left hip with a titanium joint. The recovery, he explained, would be long and difficult. I would need physical therapy, home care, and most importantly, emotional support from my family. When I woke up in the recovery room, groggy and in pain, I expected to see at least one familiar face. Instead, I saw Mrs. Chun, holding a bouquet of flowers from her garden and wearing the same worried expression she'd had when she found me on the ice. "Where are they?" I whispered, my voice hoarse from the anesthesia. She took my hand gently. I called them all Margaret. Sarah said she'd try to come this weekend. Michael said he'd visit when his meetings slow down. Jennifer. She paused, her expression pained. Jennifer said she'd call you when she gets back from her business trip. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of medication and mounting disappointment. Mrs. Chun visited every day, bringing homemade soup and sitting with me during the long, lonely hours. My physical therapist, a young woman named Emma, worked patiently with me as I struggled to take my first painful steps. The nurses were kind and professional, but they weren't my children. They weren't the people I had devoted my life to raising, the ones who should have been there in my moment of greatest need. Sarah finally appeared on Saturday afternoon, 5 days after my surgery. She swept into my hospital room like a tornado, her designer suit perfectly pressed despite the weekend, her phone buzzing constantly with what she deemed more important matters. "You look good, Mom," she said, barely glancing at the bruising on my legs or the pain written across my face. "See? I told you it wasn't that serious." She stayed for exactly 37 minutes, I counted. During that brief visit, she spent more time on her phone than talking to me. When a call came in about her case, she actually held up a finger to shush me mid-sentence. "Sorry, Mom. I have to take this. It's important." More important than her recovering mother, apparently. She left with a quick kiss on my forehead and a promise to check in soon, which we both knew was meaningless. Michael's visit came the following Tuesday, a full week after my surgery. He arrived during his lunch break, still wearing his suit and checking his watch every few minutes. "You're looking better," he lied, clearly uncomfortable with the reality of my condition. I tried to tell him about the pain, the sleepless nights, the fear I felt about going home alone. "Don't be so dramatic, Mom," he interrupted. "Everyone recovers from hip surgery. Mrs. Peterson next door to you had it done last year and she's fine now." He stayed for 20 minutes, spending most of it on his phone scrolling through emails. When a text came in, he jumped up eagerly. "Sorry, Mom, crisis at work. You understand." And he was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of his expensive cologne and a deeper ache in my chest than any physical pain I was experiencing. Jennifer never came at all. She sent a generic get-well card from her hotel gift shop with a hastily scribbled note. "Hope you're feeling better. Recovery will fly by. XOXO." The card showed a cartoon cat with its leg in a cast, giving a thumbs up. At 73, recovering from major surgery, I was reduced to a cartoon cat in my youngest daughter's mind. The real revelation came when I was discharged from the hospital. Dr. Martinez had recommended a rehabilitation facility for at least 2 weeks, but my insurance would only cover it if family couldn't provide adequate care at home. I called all 3 of my children, explaining the situation, asking if any of them could help me through the critical early weeks of recovery. Sarah's response was swift and crushing. "Mom, I can't possibly take time off right now. This case is worth millions to the firm. Can't you just hire someone?" Michael was equally dismissive. "I'm sure you'll manage fine on your own. You always do." And Jennifer, calling from her hotel room between business dinners, was the most callous of all. "You're being way too dramatic about this. It's just a broken hip. Plenty of old people break hips and get better. You don't need us hovering over you. Just a broken hip." Those 4 words became a refrain that echoed through my mind as I sat in my empty house, struggling to navigate stairs that had never seemed so steep, trying to shower without falling, reaching for items that had never been so high. Mrs. Chun checked on me daily, bringing meals and helping with basic tasks. Emma, my physical therapist, came 3 times a week, patiently working with me as I fought to regain my strength. My pharmacist's delivery driver became a friendly face I looked forward to seeing. The mailman asked about my recovery with genuine concern. But my own children? Sarah sent a fruit basket with a card signed by her assistant. Michael had groceries delivered once, the most impersonal gesture possible. Jennifer posted photos of her business trip on social media, dining at expensive restaurants and attending cocktail parties, while her mother struggled to make a cup of tea without falling. It was during one of those difficult nights, about 3 weeks after surgery, that I had my moment of clarity. I had fallen trying to get to the bathroom, my hip screaming with pain as I lay helpless on the cold tile floor for nearly an hour before Mrs. Chen's evening check-in. As she helped me back to bed, her face etched with worry, I realized something profound. The people who truly cared about me weren't bound to me by blood. They were bound to me by choice, by character, by simple human decency. The next morning, I called my attorney, Harold Kramer, who had handled my affairs for 20 years. "Harold, I need to make some changes to my will," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in weeks. "Of course, Margaret. What kind of changes are you thinking about?" "I want to leave everything to Mrs. Chun and to establish a fund for people recovering from orthopedic injuries who don't have family support." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Margaret, that's a significant decision. Are you sure you've thought this through? What about your children?" "My children," I said, the words heavy with months of accumulated hurt, "have made it very clear that a broken hip isn't serious enough to warrant their attention. If my injuries don't matter to them while I'm alive, why should my assets matter to them when I'm gone?" The legal process was surprisingly straightforward. I wasn't acting in anger or haste. I was acting with the cold clarity that comes from profound disappointment. I left detailed documentation of my children's abandonment during my recovery. The dates they were called, their responses, the offers of help that never came. I wanted there to be no question about why I had made this decision. Mrs. Chun would inherit the house and most of my savings. The remainder would go toward establishing the Margaret Morrison Recovery Support Fund, which would provide assistance to elderly patients recovering from serious injuries without adequate family support. It felt poetic that my children's neglect would become someone else's salvation. I didn't tell them immediately. Instead, I watched and waited, giving them opportunities to redeem themselves. Sarah called once a month, brief conversations that felt more like obligation than affection. Michael sent occasional texts asking if I needed anything, but never followed through when I mentioned specific needs. Jennifer sent holiday cards and birthday wishes, maintaining the illusion of a relationship without any substance. 6 months after my surgery, I had regained most of my mobility, though I still walked with a slight limp and relied on a cane for longer distances. Mrs. Chun and I had grown closer through the ordeal, and I came to think of her as the daughter I never had, present, caring, and genuine in her concern for my well-being. She never asked for anything in return for her kindness, which made my decision feel even more right. The revelation came at Christmas dinner, which I hosted as I had every year for decades. All 3 of my children came, their first time being in the same room with me since before my accident. They seemed relieved to see me looking well, as if my recovery validated their neglect. "See," Sarah said, raising her wine glass in a toast. "I told you that hip thing wasn't serious. You're as strong as ever." That hip thing. The months of agony, fear, and abandonment reduced to a casual dismissal. I smiled and raised my own glass, but inside, my resolve crystallized into something unbreakable. After dinner, as they relaxed in my living room discussing their successful careers and expensive vacations, I made my announcement. "I have something to tell you all," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I've updated my will." They perked up immediately, suddenly paying attention in a way they hadn't all evening. "Oh," Michael asked, leaning forward with interest. "Yes, I've decided to leave the house to Mrs. Chun, along with most of my savings. The rest will go toward establishing a fund to help elderly people who are recovering from serious injuries without family support." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah was the first to speak, her lawyer's instincts kicking in. "Mom, what are you talking about? You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious," I replied. "When I broke my hip, not just a broken hip, Sarah, but a serious injury that required major surgery and months of recovery, none of you thought it was important enough to be there for me. Mrs. Chun was there every day. She fed me, helped me shower, drove me to physical therapy, held my hand through the difficult nights. She acted like family when my actual family was too busy with their important lives." Jennifer's face had gone pale. "But we're your children. We love you." "Love is action, not words," I said, looking at each of them in turn. "Love shows up. Love answers phone calls about medical emergencies. Love doesn't dismiss a parent's pain as not serious or dramatic. You've all made it very clear what matters to you, and it isn't me. Michael stood up abruptly, his face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous, Mom. You're punishing us because we have careers, because we couldn't drop everything for a broken hip. No, Michael. I'm rewarding someone who did drop everything. Someone who showed me what real love looks like. I met his gaze steadily. If you can't understand the difference between having careers and having hearts, then you've proven my point. They left that night in a fury of accusations and threats. Sarah mentioned contesting the will. Michael called me vindictive and cruel. Jennifer cried and begged, suddenly full of promises to be a better daughter. But their reactions only confirmed what I already knew. They weren't upset about losing me. They were upset about losing my money. The months that followed were peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Without the weight of their conditional love, I felt lighter, freer. Mrs. Chun and I traveled together, visited museums, attended concerts. I volunteered with Emma at the rehabilitation center, helping other elderly patients navigate their recovery with dignity and support. My children made a few attempts to reconcile, but their efforts felt hollow and self-interested. Sarah sent flowers on Mother's Day with a card about forgiveness. Michael offered to visit more often, with the transparent hope of changing my mind. Jennifer wrote long letters about how much she had always loved me, conveniently forgetting her absence during my darkest hours. But I had learned something valuable during those long, painful months after my accident. Love that has to be bargained for isn't love at all. Real love shows up in hospital rooms. Real love answers desperate phone calls. Real love doesn't need to be reminded to care. A year and a half after my surgery, I hosted a small dinner party for Mrs. Chen's birthday. As we sat in my garden, surrounded by friends who had chosen to be part of my life, rather than simply inherited the obligation, I felt a profound sense of peace. The hip that my children had dismissed as just broken had indeed healed, but more importantly, so had I. I still walk with a cane sometimes, especially on cold Chicago days when the titanium joint reminds me of that February morning on the ice. But I don't see it as a limitation anymore. I see it as a symbol of survival, of the strength I found when I needed it most, and of the clarity that came from being abandoned by those who should have loved me best. My children may contest the will when the time comes. They may hire lawyers and fight for money they think is theirs by right of birth. But they can't contest the truth. That when I needed them most, they weren't there. And when Mrs. Chun needed nothing from me but gave everything, she proved that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. The X-rays from my broken hip are framed on my mantle now, a reminder of the day my life cracked open and showed me what really mattered. They're the only inheritance my children have truly earned. A permanent record of the moment they chose their convenience over their mother's suffering, and a testament to the love they lost because they never bothered to see its value. Sometimes the greatest gifts come from our deepest wounds. My broken hip broke more than bone. It shattered illusions I had carried for years about unconditional parental love and children's obligations. But in the ruins of those illusions, I found something far more precious. The knowledge that I deserved better, and the courage to choose it. These days, when people ask me about my children, I smile and talk about Mrs. Chen's garden, or Emma's work at the rehabilitation center, or the patients I help through the recovery fund. Because those are my real children now, the people who chose to love me when love required sacrifice, who showed up when showing up was difficult, who proved that the best families are built on foundation of care rather than DNA. The house that Sarah, Michael, and Jennifer expected to inherit someday will go to someone who has already made it feel like home through her presence and kindness. The money they assumed would be theirs will help other forgotten elderly people receive the support their own families deny them. And the mother they took for granted will rest peacefully, knowing that her final act was one of justice rather than revenge. After all, it wasn't just a broken hip. It was the breaking point that set me free.